The question is that the motion be agreed to. I call the honourable member, Philip Twyford.
Mr Speaker, I want to add my congratulations to the success that you had on the weekend being elected as a member of the Papatoetoe subdivision of the Otara Papatoetoe local board. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And it's very timely, actually, to be debating this rather non-controversial legislation about the Auckland Council local boards, because I think that the local government election results on the weekend suggest, well, if not a maturing, so I think some useful development of the local boards. And it's worth noting, sir, that actually what we saw across the city and parts of the region, not all, but parts of the region, was quite a swing to the left politically, and a growing success of tickets, whether they're community coalition tickets or in fact political party tickets. And I'm very pleased, Mr Speaker, to see in West Auckland, where I'm based, two very successful Labour tickets in the Henderson Massey local board, elected 3 members for the first time, and the Labour ticket in the Faux local board actually won a majority. So that was extremely successful. In the Waitakere Rangers local board, the Future West, which is a Labour Green Community Independence ticket, cleaned up and won all of the 6 seats. In the Puketa Papa seat, the Roskill Community Voice won a majority there. City Vision held on to majorities in the Waitemata and Eden Albert local board areas, and the Labour team in Mangere Otahuhu held on to its majority there. So interesting to see more successful campaigning by tickets, which I think is good, because when you think about a lot of the commentary that we've seen publicly over the last couple of weeks about the low turnout in local government, and the argument some people have made that in the larger centres where people don't know each other so personally, voters don't know who they're voting for, and therefore a ticket with an identifiable brand and a set of values and policies makes it easier for people to know who they're voting for and what they're voting for. So that's, from my point of view, sir, and from the point of view of the left in Auckland, to see that kind of strength in the election results in the local boards across Auckland Council was very gratifying. This bill, sir, as has been said by the Minister, Chris Tremaine, one of the real sort of nice guys of this House, going to be sorry to see him go at the end of this term, but I think Stuart Nash will make an excellent replacement, and look forward to Stuart resuming his place in the House. This is a technical bill, of course. We're supporting it. It's only before the House because of the incompetence of the National Government in the way that they drafted the Super City legislation. They made these powers of delegation that the local boards rely on to delegate the work of the board to council staff. The day-to-day tasks need to be delegated in many cases. This enabling legislation allows that to happen, but it should never have been put in a bill with a sunset clause, as was done by the National Government. But nevertheless, we are supporting it, sir. And I think it's a moment now when we can reflect on the local boards. They were the subject of so much controversy and debate during the time that Rodney Hyde was implementing the Super City reforms in 2009 and 2010, and we argued whether there should be fewer or more, whether they should be bigger or smaller. And the government opted for this 2-tier structure with 21 local boards, with most of the significant decision-making powers concentrated in the governing body, or what most people would describe as the council. But these local boards, given the role of essentially being a kind of community engagement mechanism for the Super City, they have, and I'm sorry to say this given that you've just won election, Mr Speaker, to one of these local boards, but they have very few decision-making powers. They have no regulatory or rule-making powers. They have oversight of budgets, but in fact most of those budgets have been allocated, so really what they're doing is kind of twiddling around the edges. They have the management and control of some libraries, some parks, some community facilities, but it's pretty small stuff. And in fact, what these local boards are is a kind of advocacy platform for communities to be able to come and lobby, convince the local boards of certain issues, and the idea is that those boards will then advocate upwards to the governing body. Well, it's a kind of governance model. I know the Green and New Zealand First members think it's not upwards, but frankly, sir, I would submit that they are in la-la land if they think that the local boards, and the governing body of Auckland Council are some kind of horizontal arrangement with power shared equally between them, because they are not. And in fact, I think, sir, that is why the jury is still out on this governance model that was chosen by Rodney Hyde and the national government, because it gives a second tier of governance at the local level that has very little in the way of real decision-making power. And now there are other councils around New Zealand, like the Wellington region, that are considering the same kind of two-tier model and trying to weigh up whether, in fact, the two-tier model with these so-called local boards is a good way to go. And frankly, sir, I actually think a larger assembly model with a greater number of councillors acting more like a parliament with electorates could actually have offered a far higher level of democratic accountability and real decision-making power much closer to the communities. But that wasn't the way Rodney Hyde saw it. And we saw actually a really interesting insight in the Herald on Sunday this weekend when Rodney Hyde in his column in the Herald on Sunday said that if it was his choice, he would replace the elected representatives of local government with appointed officials. And so that explains a lot about Rodney Hyde's time as the Minister of Local Government and the decisions that he made on behalf of this National Party, that he made in setting up the Auckland Super City, because he was the one, and it was the members opposite who voted for a highly corporatised structure in Auckland that took 75% of the services and the assets in Auckland and handed them over to corporate entities governed by hand-picked business appointees, the boards of these so-called council-controlled organisations. And that was just one of a whole pipeline of decisions and policies that Nationals made, sir, that showed a contempt for local democracy and attempt for the right of communities to control their cities and their communities, sir. We saw it with the way that they handled the Super City. We've seen it with the suspension of democracy in Canterbury in terms of of Environment Canterbury. We've seen it in the way that the purpose statement of local government was stripped out of the local government legislation. And we saw it most recently actually in the Land Transport Management Amendment Bill that shifted transport priority setting away from local communities and shifted it to the executive arm of government, that is the Cabinet, sir. So how have the local boards gone? I think the jury is out. Some of them have done very well. Some of the elected representatives on the local boards in Auckland have done a fantastic job of responding to the needs of their communities, raising issues, taking initiatives. Others, I would say, not so much. And I think what my hope is, sir, is that in this second term of the Auckland Council, the new crop of elected representatives and local board members right across the region will really take the bull by the horns and use these local boards as a platform to campaign, to raise issues, to speak out on behalf of their communities, as some of them have done very effectively. Not to be constrained by the very limited decision-making powers and resources that they have at their disposal, but to speak up for their communities, to build alliances with each other, to build alliances with the members of the governing body, and to really use the local boards as a platform to raise issues and progress their own agendas, sir. And if they do that, sir, they will at least, I think, have made the most of the opportunity that these local boards offer. Thank you.
I call Nicky Wagner. Thank you, Mr Speaker.